I lost money because I trusted the wrong story. Not because I was dumb, not because I wasn't paying attention, but because I believed what everyone around me believed, that gold was a relic, a dusty old asset for paranoid people who didn't trust banks, something your weird uncle buys and buries in his backyard. So I ignored it. For years I ignored it. And then one night I was sitting at my desk, charts open, coffee going cold, and I saw something that genuinely stopped me cold. Gold wasn't just moving, it was accelerating. And not in a healthy, normal, this makes sense kind of way. It was moving the way things move right before something big breaks. And I had completely missed the early part of it, because I was too busy laughing at the people who saw it coming. That was my first mistake, assuming I understood something I had never actually studied.
Here's what the data actually shows. Over the last 40 years, gold averaged about 6.5% annually. Slow, predictable. The kind of return that makes financial advisors nod politely and then go back to pushing index funds. But over the last 5 years, that number has jumped to nearly 20% per year. Same asset, completely different behavior. So I started asking why, and every answer I found led me to a bigger question I wasn't prepared for. Because here's what most people get wrong, and I got this wrong too for a long time. They assume gold is rising because of inflation. It sounds logical. Prices go up, dollar buys less, gold goes up. Clean and simple. Except it's not what actually happened. Back in 2021, when inflation was genuinely out of control, when rent was climbing, groceries were brutal, and the CPI was moving faster than anyone wanted to admit, gold barely moved. It just sat there like it didn't get the memo. So if inflation isn't the real driver, then what is?
I spent weeks going through reports, central bank data, reserve currency breakdowns, and what I found was something that I think most Americans aren't fully seeing yet. Foreign governments are quietly walking away from the US dollar. Not running, not panicking, walking. Slowly, deliberately. The way someone changes their plans before they ever say out loud that something is wrong. For 80 years, the US dollar has been the global reserve currency, the foundation that international trade, central bank reserves, and global finance was built on. But over the last 2 decades, that share has dropped from over 70% of global reserves down to 58% today. 12 percentage points, trillions of dollars, quietly redirected. And where did that money go? Gold. Central banks around the world have bought over 1,000 tons of gold 3 years in a row. That's more than double the average from the decade before. And 2024 was the single highest gold buying year ever recorded in history. These aren't retail investors reacting to a headline. These are the most powerful financial institutions on the planet, making deliberate, long-term moves. And they don't do that casually. Over 40% of central banks have said they plan to buy even more gold over the next decade. 95% expect global gold holdings to keep rising in the next 12 months alone. When I first read those numbers, I honestly thought I was misreading something. So I went back and checked again. I wasn't misreading it. And here's the part that took me the longest to actually understand, because this was my second big mistake. I kept thinking this was a panic trade. I kept waiting for the obvious crisis, the visible collapse, the moment where everything falls apart on screen and gold spikes because people are scared. But that moment never came, and gold kept going up anyway. Because what's actually happening isn't reaction, it's preparation. Right now, the stock market is near all-time highs. Tech stocks are running like it's a bull market with no ceiling. Sentiment on the surface looks positive. Risk assets are moving like confidence is everywhere. And gold is also at all-time highs at the exact same time. That has almost never happened before. Historically, markets pick a direction. Either confidence is high and money flows into risk assets, or fear is rising and money flows into safety. Both moving up together simultaneously, that breaks the pattern entirely. What that disconnect is actually telling you is this. The same institutions buying stocks with one hand are hedging an uncertain future with the other. They're not choosing optimism or fear. They're betting on both because they genuinely don't know which one wins from here. So what do you actually do with this information? First, stop treating gold as a panic button you only reach for when everything is already on fire. That's too late. The people who actually benefit from moves like this are the ones who positioned before the crisis became obvious to everyone. Second, watch what central banks are doing, not what they're saying. Actions in reserve allocation tell you far more than any press release or policy statement ever will. Third, understand that this isn't about gold being special. It's about trust. When the institutions that run the global financial system start quietly moving away from a currency they helped make dominant, that movement means something. Gold is just where that lost trust is going. I'm not here to tell you the dollar is collapsing or the system is about to break. That narrative is usually pushed by people with something to sell you. The dollar is still the dominant global currency, and that isn't changing overnight. But something is shifting underneath the surface, slowly, quietly, in the places most people aren't looking. And the biggest players in global finance are already adjusting for it. The question isn't whether this is happening. The question is whether you're paying attention before it becomes impossible to ignore.